everybody, and welcome to another episode of Nat Chat. Today we are joined by the Cisco CISG team, which is the Cloud Infrastructure and Software Group. And I'm very pleased to be joined by Neil Travains and Jed Fitton. So hi guys.
Hi Hayley.
Hi Hayley, how are you?
Very good, very good. Very cold on this November afternoon, I can say that for a fact. But thank you so much for joining us. And we've got quite a lot to get through today, so I'm going to jump in straight away. And this kind of came up from us talking over a recent meeting and just wanting to kind of bring everybody together and let our listeners know of what's new and exciting from your world. And when we're thinking about your world, obviously CISG team, see, I even got it wrong then, obviously sounds like it's quite a new team to Cisco, but actually it isn't, is it, Jed?
No, well, I suppose CISG, I mean, Cisco's been in the data center business for a long time, as much as almost like 15 years. So most people think of Cisco as being, you know, a networking company, and certainly our heritage in the data center was born out of evolving our switching portfolio to make it relevant for the data center. And then about 11 years ago, we also created a compute platform, what we call the Unified Computing System, that probably many of the listeners are familiar with. And that was really the sort of start of us converging, you know, data center infrastructure. So we were bringing networking and compute together. So traditionally inside Cisco, you know, we've always been known as the data center and cloud team. But I suppose, like all good companies, we like a rebrand. So we decided a few years back, because of the reality that of what was going on in cloud, particularly with the hyperscalers, and I suppose everything, it's all about a name, isn't it? So the Cloud Infrastructure and Software Group was just a branding change to recognise the way that customers were consuming cloud, whether it be, you know, private clouds on their own premises, or whether they were using the public cloud. So that's where that rather natty 4-letter acronym comes from. That's the history. But Cisco's been in this business a long time, so you know, we really get the data center and how important it is for customers.
Yeah, and do not worry, I work in marketing, so 4-letter acronyms are bread and butter, and we have our own little glossary because in our industry, I swear they come up every 2 seconds. There's a new acronym for something. But it's quite interesting because the landscape for this part of our world has changed dramatically. And we're not even saying, you know, it's changed dramatically in the last 10 years, like 5 years. Like it's coming down to like 2 years, 6 months, there's a new shift of what's happening. And it's really interesting to see how, you know, companies and technology leaders like Cisco are like shifting to really answer the needs of the market. And it'll be great to kind of get your take. And obviously, you know, how does the Cisco technology at the moment, how does it align to the challenges we're seeing in this new hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, cloud world?
Yeah, everything is has gone through a rampant phase of cloud washing. So we associate the cloud name with everything, which, you know, the first instance of a true cloud offering in our space from AWS is, you know, that's probably 17 or 18 years ago. So this is something that has been around for a while. But you're right, we seem to revel in as an industry, and in terms of the technology press that sits around this, we revel in adding to this lexicon of terminology that sits around it. But part of that is driven by the fact that the market itself is simply evolving. You know, when we first brought out the idea of cloud, when somebody first came up with the idea of some kind of working definition of what that would be, about 10 years ago, you know, nobody would have thought we would have got to the stage that we're at now, in terms of, you know, the dominance of AWS, and to an extent Azure, but also GCP and IBM and Alibaba from a hyperscalers, from a public cloud perspective. but also the shift that customers now want to be able to achieve the same kind of experience, the same kind of consumption and operational model, but inside their own data centers. And those data centers might not even be their own bricks and mortar. It's not you gain no competitive advantage by running a team of mechanical and electrical engineers who are responsible for looking after an aircraft hangar full of kit. That's not kind of core to anyone's business unless you are, unless you're a co-location provider. And so we've often seen, and particularly analysts like Gartner talked about the death of the data center. And it's not the death of the data center. It's just not what your parents' data center would have looked like. It's now co-location rather than you having your own industrial unit that you then had to fit out, manage, maintain, and secure. And that's a core part of how some of the terminology around cloud, particularly around hybrid cloud, has definitely evolved. Now it's not about how quickly you move to the cloud, which at the beginning of all of this process was very much kind of a pell-mell rush towards it, and that accelerated through lockdown and through the pandemic. Now people are starting to look at it through the lens of, if I want to do something new, if I want to engage with my customers, and those customers could be internal, it could be a call center worker, it could be external. If I want to engage with them, then part of that is I need to be able to understand them better. So I need to be able to build systems of insight and intelligence. And then once I've built that, I need to offer innovative platforms. And whilst I go through that kind of business and application architecture transformation, I need to transform what underpins and helps me to deliver the customer experience that's associated with that. And customers are now realizing that actually I can achieve that. I can achieve this idea of a cloud-inspired data center, as Gartner once referred to it, inside my own physical location, colo, even inside my own data center. Doesn't have to be all about going to the cloud. And so now the question is, if I want to bring online a new application or a new service, where is the most appropriate place for me to run that application and its workloads in order to achieve the desired customer experience? And Jed knows I'm not a big fan of the journey word, but to deliver the right customer journey, to not look at it from an individual application basis, but an entire business transaction. And that's the biggest shift that we've seen. And that's influenced what we have done within CISG. So, going back to what Jed was talking about, back when we were born as a team, as an architecture team, you'd have looked at our portfolio and it was Nexus switches for the data center. We built on everything that we'd done from a Catalyst perspective, and we launched compute. Now you look at our portfolio still has those elements absolutely at its foundation, but it's the layers of software that we put on top of that now becomes the critical elements to deliver that idea of that customer experience in terms of, if it's a developer, how do I consume the infrastructure that underpins the application that I'm bringing to life? If it's a service delivery manager, how can I assure the performance of the applications that's serving those end customers? If I'm a line of business owner, can I make sure that what I'm delivering out to my customers is absolutely the best experience they can have with me? Because we're not brand loyal anymore. We're experience loyal. If we look in our own personal lives, it's not so much about the brand, it's about the experience.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I do feel that actually having the variety of choice in regards to where your application sits, it is challenging people to really get down to the nitty-gritty of what does it need to do and how does it improve that experience, like you said, because if you can, I don't know whether it's really heightening the importance of choosing the best architecture for that specific application, and whether that be in the cloud, whether that be on-prem, whether that be in a hybrid kind of environment. Hopefully, this kind of intensity to choose that right architecture, because we all know what happens if you don't. You get a bad experience. You get, the performance of the app, falls to the floor, or even worse, you re-architecture wrong in the cloud and it costs you a fortune. And it's those kind of, we're seeing much more of a repercussion of choosing bad architecture than maybe we would have done in the past when there only was one choice.
Yes.
It lived in the data center. And if you wanted to change that architecture, it'd cost you a lot of money, take a lot of time and a lot of manpower. Whereas now, having that choice and having the ability to go, actually, no, this isn't working, we have another option to try, hopefully will just deliver better experiences for everyone.
Yeah, yes, it will. It will. But what it does bring is it brings, and I think you mentioned it, Heidi. It brings this level of complexity. It brings a level of complexity, and one thing that we cannot and should never do inside IT, and we've struggled with this since the very beginning, since the earliest times of building kind of enterprise grade applications. We should never really be bringing complexity into our world. And we have consistently. And that's why we end up, usually that's one of the principal reasons why we end up with such a vast array of technical debt that sits inside our organisations. It's so complex, we can't understand it, it's not well documented. So if we're going to embark upon this idea of kind of hybrid cloud evolved, and there are a lot of, great research papers out there to show the business transformation that can be achieved by mastering hybrid cloud, if you want. IBM's Institute for Business Value, for instance, did a survey which showed that those organisations who had mastered hybrid cloud based on their definition, it was a 13 times multiplier on the investment they had made in order to be able to get to that point. And in some industries, it could be as high as 20 times. So you are tying this definitely to a set of business outcomes, which has always been slightly challenging for us in IT to make that linkage. This we absolutely can, and it's because we measure that customer experience. It's because we look at it through the lens of the ultimate consumer, and we tie that into IT's heartland. We tie that into the engineering that's responsible for sitting underneath it. And if you can measure the experience, it means you can make informed decisions, exactly to your point, Hayley, about where is the right place for me to build this new application, to house this new application. Is it an on-prem? Is it an off-prem? Is it a mix of the two? And to be able to model it and test it in the same way that a software developer would test and model their software. We are starting to spend a bit more time doing what we should have done all along, which is learn from the world that exists outside of particularly IT infrastructure and operations, who are often the people who are responsible for delivering on whatever that hybrid cloud or cloud strategy might be.
Probably just to add to some of Neil's points. I mean, we've always, in a sense, in these hybrid cloud worlds, it's sort of built on this sort of 5-layered model in a sense, because when you build these environments, of course, it's all about the underlying infrastructure, whether or not it's an on-premise infrastructure, you're taking that infrastructure from the cloud. That's critically important. And of course, once you've chosen that infrastructure platform, you've got to network it. You've got to connect these environments together to it, and that creates the environment on which you can build these modern applications. And of course, as things have become more distributed, that's actually exposed the sort of attack surfaces as well, about how people can cause digital chaos inside businesses. So security then all of a sudden becomes really, really important, and security that shifts to the left. So as Neil was saying, this isn't about putting in firewalls. That's critically important on the perimeter, but that's like building a moat around your castle. But also what you need to do is shift security to the left. So as this new modern application is being built, security is embedded in the code of the application basically as it's being built. So, and of course, once you built your application in this hybrid cloud world, I mean, Neil mentioned this, you have to observe what is going on, the experience of that environment to give insight into exactly what's going on inside that application. If it's and many of these microservice-based applications themselves, I've seen some pretty scary pictures of, to take Monzo as an example, about Monzo's amazing digital platform, but just how complex it is. But you need observability, that when something doesn't quite work in that matrix, you know where the problem is, you can get to it quickly, because as Neil said, it's all about experience. People now want the experience. And of course, when you do have issues, when you need a really good operations model. You need a cloud operations model that enables you to subtly adjust that infrastructure right down the bottom, turn it up, turn it down, optimize it, assure it, and then do this all the way through the lens of automation. So those 5 layers in this hybrid world of sort of infrastructure, connectivity, security, observability and operations is something I've embedded in my head now. It's like, these are really important themes that you need to build into sort of like a modern operating model for a hybrid cloud. And those principles apply whether you're taking it from you're a cloud native and everything goes on inside a hyperscaler, or in a modern application world that's very, very sort of like hyperscaler oriented, or even in your own private cloud, or a blend of both.
Yeah, no, I really like that kind of. It's almost like the simplification to those like 5 kind of key areas. If you had a to-do list with a little checkbox and being like, right, we're doing this. Have we got connectivity? Can we see what's going on? Is it secure? And like kind of go down the list. It'd be a good starting point. And I suppose it's just, with every application and working in these different environments, it's refining that to get the best practice, which aligns to your business and B, the technology that you're using. So really good kind of framework there. I like that.
And I think it's probably, Neil touched on this principle of complexity, this sprawl, this technical debt that's built up inside companies. The reality behind this is that we talk about supply chain challenges at the moment. We're ordering a car and it's not turning up quite as quickly as we'd like it to. You're ordering technology and it's not turning up quite as quickly because of all the complexities. At the end of the day, every application has almost like a digital supply chain of how that application functions. So if you don't truly understand that supply chain of what is going on in the application and how infrastructure can have a massive impact on how that digital supply chain operates, that's why it's so important to have these tools. And cloud is a very nebulous term, as Neil was alluding to. At the end of the day, cloud inspired is a term that Neil taught me a long time ago. It's about, everything you've expected to get from the hyperscalers, the great things that AWS and Azure have done and GCP done, is we need to bring the best of those capabilities and effectively bring them on premise as well. And I think, Neil, there was this term, wasn't there, about this principle of these things called the principle of a super cloud, because customers, we love terms like this.
We love another term. And David Linthicum, who's the global chief cloud architect for Deloitte, actually apologized to the global IT community because he felt in some way responsible for adding yet another term to the lexicon. And actually he prefers the term meta cloud, but no disrespect to marketing people, Hayley, but they preferred the super clouds.
I was going to say, it sounds like marketing were involved in some part of this. I take that.
I still claim that it is hybrid cloud evolved. It is the idea, as Jed's been describing. It's about taking those capabilities, a fabric of capabilities around the underlying infrastructure, the connectivity, the security, the observability, the operational model and tooling that sits around that, and striping that across all of those execution venues. You know, David Linthicum, and you can tell I'm a big fan of David Linthicum because he's a plain speaker, despite the fact that he works in the world of cloud. And his view is that no execution venue is off the table. It's a very pragmatic view of the world, and it comes back to what we said at the beginning, which is it's not about how quickly am I moving to the cloud. It's about if I want to do something new, if I want to engage with my customers in a new way, if I want to drive insights and intelligence about my customers, where is the right place or where is the right set of places for me to deploy it? And that could be part of that could be a mainframe. Part of it could be, a set of big Unix boxes. Some of it could be on-prem, on-prem compute as we know it. But it extends all the way out to everything that is served by the world of the hyperscalers, by the AWS and Azure and GCPs of this world. And it could be microservices based. It could run on containers. It could even be, it could even be functions as a service. The idea of kind of serverless. But it's about making informed choices. It's about using empirical evidence and sitting that in alongside a list of business requirements and security, compliance, regulatory requirements, so that you're making an informed decision about which of those choices you can take. I mean, I tend to joke that, the reason I weigh the best part of 20 stone is because of a vast array of unfettered choice that's not controlled by anything. Yeah, because if I could eat on an hourly basis, I would eat on an hourly basis. So having a vast array of choice but without any degree of control is not a good thing. Particularly when we're trying to minimize the level of complexity that exists within our environments, because complexity is what breeds operational risk, and that's not something we should ever entertain. Part of our role in IT is to mitigate risk. It's not to build additional risk into what we do, and that's why I think, regardless of its term, supercloud, metacloud, hybrid cloud evolved, true hybrid cloud, whatever you want to call it, I think we're at a tipping point now where there's a lot more sensible discussions going on about where is the right place to execute workloads, rather than just run kind of pell-mell towards one particular execution venue and kind of betting the farm on that execution venue.
Yeah, I think also, like, one word which jumped at me what you were just saying there is more discussions, and I think that's really, really important, because the one thing as well, along with heightened complexity, is sometimes it's siloed knowledge, and you might have one person that is the expert in operating, Kubernetes clusters over here, and you've got one person that's maintains your on-prem data center over there, and actually linking everybody together, understanding how their different environments were, sharing that knowledge, and actually using that as like you were saying, the insight to power where you go and what you do where, is really important, because it's another risk to a business, having that siloed knowledge in these disparate teams which think they're not alike, but actually they're very alike.
Exactly. You end up creating another set of silos. You create a parallel set of silos, effectively. So we've had the silos we've always had that sat within IT, and we've tried desperately to try and break down those silos. Now you're actually talking about, adding another silo or set of silos, which could be the world of the hyperscalers and everything that sits in there. But alongside that, you're now potentially bringing in a silo of tooling and operational models and visibility. And it's no, this has to be end to end. If I'm building a next generation car manufacturing plant, I'm instrumenting that platform. I'm instrumenting that platform from the minute the aluminium turns up at the loading dock, and I'm instrumenting that platform all the way through till the car does its final test and rolls off the production line. That's what we need to do in IT. It's no different. Whilst there are stages along that manufacturing process, it's there to serve a need, which is to deliver that car, turn a bunch of raw materials into a car that can then be sold. It's no different for us. Some of the things that Jed was talking about around that idea of a digital supply chain. We're seeing now, particularly in the realms of containers, and there's a push at a federal government level in the US for this, which is this understanding a software bill of materials. Yeah, in the same way that you would have a bill of materials for, building a car, building a house, my 2.5 year long project of building a deck in my back garden. We all have it has a bill of materials, and we're now starting to bring that into our world, the world of IT, because we need to understand, to Jed's point, we need to understand where's the constraints in that. Part of it is we need to understand where's the constraints. What things are going to hold us back? Is there a different way that we could do it? But we also need to understand what those component parts are, because each of those component parts in our world could present a security vulnerability. Yeah, we're potentially increasing that threat surface, which is something we find quite challenging. So we need a different security model. To echoing what Jed was saying earlier, we need a security model that extends broader and deeper into our architectures that underpins our businesses. We absolutely need that castle wall and moat. We need that perimeter. We also need a bodyguard. We need close protection officers for some of the most critical software components that sit within our data centers, because and we need to be very conscious of the east-west traffic that happens in there, not just the north-south. It's not just the traffic going in and out. It's what happens inside as well, particularly where, again, echoing Jed's point, it's an inherently distributed world, and it's only going to get more distributed as we build out next generation application architectures. And so there are parts of that where we can't see the castle wall. We can't see the portcullis and the moat. So we need to have other security mechanisms that allow us to think about it at a container level, for instance, or implement security when a container is initialized, to be actively scanning for vulnerabilities. We need something that sits there. And I think that makes a lot of sense. We've struggled with doing it in IT because it's typically involved us positioning things like firewalls deeper inside our architectures, which become bottlenecks. And it's all about performance. A big part of customer experience is about performance. But if I can use software agents to take that on and utilize the power of the connectivity that sits between those software components and still be able to secure it, that makes more sense, because when somebody breaks into a warehouse, they're not interested in stealing the door that they just broke through. Yeah, they're interested in what's inside the warehouse, and they're interested in getting around that warehouse, getting to the thing that's most valuable, and getting back out again. So whilst you want to make it as hard as possible for them to get in the first place, what you really want to do is make sure that they can't get away with what they're looking for inside that warehouse. And so, it's things that we've brought to bear, like secure workload, and some of the elements we're doing around container security that are absolutely have been built to deliver that capability, and security then becomes a spectrum. And I can look at risk profiles and determine what level of security do I need to apply to this particular set of applications or this particular set of customer data. What level do I need to do, and therefore how do I protect it? So our world is all about choice, but it's about how do I manage that choice? How do I make those decisions based on, as I say, empirical evidence? How do I turn visibility into a set of true insights, things that actually are going to make a difference in a positive sense, and then action them, then do something with those insights once again that's going to deliver a positive outcome.
Probably, Hayley, that point you made earlier is really important about the silos, that exist. I mean, these modern applications are built by developers that are now using, some of the most incredible agile sort of software development processes. And this sort of term DevOps and agile platforms is sort of chucked around there. Well, the reality is that those silos of where one part of an organization is building these critically important new applications for the business's success, well, we need to take those same principles and apply them to the data center, to the principle of infrastructure as code. In a sense, everything as code. So a developer can call up infrastructure that traditionally used to go to a team that took 2 or 3 days to build them a bare metal server or a virtual machine or a set of containers to do it. They need to be able to sort of just simply put a piece of code and be able to sort of turn up that infrastructure and turn that infrastructure off as well. So the principle of, GitOps, DevOps, the principle behind things like site reliability engineering, configuring your infrastructure using technologies like Terraform, for example. And whilst all of that is going on, being completely agnostic in a sense to everything that's underneath, regardless about where it resides. So, and I suppose if we go to this principle of everything as code, and effectively the infrastructure appears as, declarative sort of infrastructure, then that enables businesses to become even more agile, because when they need the resources to stand an application up for a week and then tear it down, they can do it, regardless about whether that application resides on premise, in the cloud, some mixture of both of it. And of course, the other thing is we also need to be very sensitive in these times as well to the whole principle around, the crazy stuff that's going on in the world about things like energy consumption, about the data centers, which are obviously well known for the energy that they ultimately consume as well. It's critically important to be able to only need and use the resources that we actually need, and to not have excessive infrastructure. So if you have a very agile way to call infrastructure through a automation model, you also need to make sure that those data centers are built in a sustainable way as well. That hybrid cloud is built in a sustainable way, so that we can ensure that the energy that these systems use as well is also considered as well, particularly with things like the rising cost of energy that we're all reading about every day in the newspapers.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's funny you say that. Recently I experienced it as an end user, trying to get Glastonbury tickets. A prime example of when you need your infrastructure to scale up for a specific amount of time, and getting messages back saying we cannot connect to a server, or that, we can't get there. I'm sitting there like fuming, going, well, they need more compute. Why are they not scaling up their storage? Blah, 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 blah. And, my friends were like, she's going into tech speak. I think the website's just crashed. I was like, no, it's not just the website crashing. Why is the website crashing? And it really is interesting because, like you say, if, a ticket-based event, it doesn't have to be Glastonbury, but if they ran that level of infrastructure to cope with that amount of traffic 365 days a year, completely unnecessary, completely over-egging what they require, and the energy consumption for that would be through the roof and make it not cost effective. So the ability to scale up, scale down, is so valuable to businesses. Black Friday is around the corner, Cyber Monday, Christmas. There will always be a seasonal ask for businesses, and I completely agree. If we can help businesses forecast and predict usage requirements and needs, we can maybe help remove the black mark, which has always gone against data centers in regards to the sustainability aspect.
Yeah, exactly. And it probably is a bit like, this Friday being, an incredibly important event for retailers all over the world. It won't come as any surprise that, some of the comments Neil made earlier really, they've resonated with me in the sense of, well, what do? They can often be so concerned about the ability to not be able to observe and react quickly. So what do? They freeze infrastructure or part of the infrastructure, and the business's ability to digitally adapt is frozen because of the inability to probably be able to observe digitally, what is going on in that infrastructure. Because I bet you that Glastonbury ticket experience on that website, there was probably a very complex digital supply chain underneath it. And it probably wasn't a particular server that had gone down. It probably, there wasn't a simple reason. And the experience you had, that experience you had has now made you consider what you will do the next time that you visit that site. And ultimately, is there an alternative? For the chief revenue officer of that business, that's ultimately not a good thing. So having to freeze an environment or lock down an environment because of the fear of what is happening is probably more that's rooted in the inability to probably clearly understand exactly what's going on, and then have the confidence that you know exactly what's going on, and in 60 seconds later fix the problem, arguably before many other people begin to experience it. And that's why, ultimately you can build the best of breed infrastructure, you can build the best of breed networking, you can put incredible security in all of it, but unless you're actually able to ultimately observe what is going on, and then more importantly, allow that observability to talk intelligently all the way down and lift that important information about what's going on right at the core of the infrastructure and pull that information back up, then you can't create an operations model that enables you to be really agile, that enables you to react to those situations. So, when you think about your hybrid cloud, it isn't just about the infrastructure. It's effectively about what Neil was referring to. It's about the operations model. It's what you were saying, Hayley, about the silos inside business. And those are a lot of that is just the things that stop a barrier to sort of businesses becoming truly adaptable, and being able to accelerate the way they can develop new products and new capabilities.
Okay.
It was interesting something you said, Hayley, about about your experience with kind of Glastonbury tickets. Is we're dealing with something that is mass infrastructure. The internet and access to the organisations that serve us on the internet is mass infrastructure. However, our view is a very singular view. It's our relationship with the experience we're receiving, either through our web browser or our laptop or through our smartphone or through our smart TV or whatever device we might be using to consume this. It becomes a really, really personal thing. And that's back to this idea of, that a guy called Tom Goodwin wrote a book called Digital Darwinism. And his piece was that this bit about we're not brand loyal, we're experience loyal now. And that experience is a tailored experience. It's an experience that's tailored to us. And we have a very, singular view of what that might be. And that's why, echoing Jed's point, that's why observability, being able to understand the transaction that a customer is going through and be able to proactively monitor it and adapt to the changes in what you're seeing is so critical to be able to adapt at a pace that we've never been able to adapt. We've never been able to achieve before. We've talked about agility in the world of IT for a long time. We're only now really getting to that point where, agility is something we can deliver on at a timescale that's meaningful, So, to your point around, a big push for Glastonbury tickets, our ability to ratchet up the capacity and the architecture that underpins the delivery of that ticket purchase experience in tiny time increments compared to anything we've been able to do in the past is is what's going to allow us to, Tom Goodwin's view was society and individuals move at a pace that is far greater than the pace at which we move inside our organisations. And unless we can bring the two in lockstep with each other, which basically means us inside our organisations adapting to the changes that are happening outside our organisations, not trying to go the other way round, we're not going to, some organisations are just not going to survive. And we can look at the track record going back, since the turn of the century of big names, big organisations who have ceased to exist. They've either disappeared completely, they've been acquired, they've been merged, their names have been changed, whatever it might be. And it's because we're not, they haven't been able to move at the pace with which their customers demand. And its observability and everything that we're able to do now, coupled with automation, coupled with what Jed was talking about around that idea of infrastructure as code, and being able to industrialize that automation, those two things together are what give us the power to be able to meet that ever-changing demand. McKinsey said back in 2017 that organizations found themselves in a state of perpetual evolution, both in terms of how they were needing to adapt their business, but also in how they were needing to adapt the platform architectures that underpinned those businesses. And if we can't move at that pace, then organizations are gonna suffer. And so that idea of being able to take the insights that observability creates and manifest the actions through automation, it's those two things together, which needs an underpinning that is inherently programmable and can be driven by automation. That's what's going to allow us to not become a victim of digital Darwinism.
Definitely. It is all, helping businesses maintain that competitive advantage. And, I know for a fact, because we are all end consumers somewhere, my patience is low, my expectations are high. In my mind, I want a dedicated data center for every app I use because I want that top of the range experience, even though I know that is not how it works. But you're completely spot on. And the customer experience and the rate of people's expectations is moving at a pace which, if you fall off the bandwagon and you miss a step, your competitor will not. So yeah, it is the crunch point really. But I'm very conscious we are coming closely to time, and we have discussed a hell of a lot of topics, and there's a lot of food for thought. So I just wanted to thank you all so much and invite you back, because I feel that there is a whole nother section that we could talk about. So let's make this a collective chat.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'd be delighted to.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, guys, and we'll see you very soon again on that chat.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Bailey.